On today's show, the Ottawa Senators with their third straight win last night, beating the New York Islanders 2-0. We have our takeaways from that game, as well as Leevi Meriläinen's second shutout in just 9 games. Who is this guy?
And the Ottawa Senators are in the mix for a veteran defenseman. But does it make sense?
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Pillar up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Today is Wednesday, January 15th. A happy 23rd birthday to Tim Stützle. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show, but we have to lead with Leevi Meriläinen. Pilsy, we are seeing something that hasn't been done in 10 years since the Hamburglar went bananas.
Yeah, I mean, usually I don't like bananas on my hamburger, Ross, but if Leevi Meriläinen decides to have a Hamburglar type run, this would be a good time. I mean, similar story, Ross. Your star number one goalie is out. An unknown guy comes in and saves the day. The Hamburglar run was an absolutely magical story, and the Sens could use a little magic right now.
They got a lot of Mary in their game right now, though. This kid looks so poised, so cool, so collected. He's playing the game in a rocking chair, barely any rebounds. And if you look at goals saved above expected, which is, I think, the best indicator for goaltending success, he's third in the National Hockey League right now in goals saved above expected per 60 minutes of ice time. The only guys ahead of him, Logan Thompson on the Eastern Conference leading Washington Capitals, and Connor Hellebuck on the Western Conference leading Winnipeg Jets. Like, this is some pretty elite company that Leevi Meriläinen finds himself in so early on in his career. And I don't want to put the Hamburglar pressure on him. I'm just saying we thought that was a once-in-a-lifetime run, and it was exactly 10 years ago. It was February of 2015 that the Hamburglar run started. So we got an early start on this one, but it looks so for real. Like, he just looks like a National Hockey League goalie.
Yeah, and Ross, I think in the past couple of weeks with Forsberg starting, anytime the puck was in the Sens offensive zone, I was tightening up, getting nervous. And now when the puck's in the Sens zone, I'm calm. I know that Levy's going to have it. As long as he can see it, like we've had a couple moments where he's been screened by his own defenseman. If he has a clear sight of it, I've got confidence that he's going to not only make the save, Ross, but if he does allow a rebound, it's not going to be a juicy one in a dangerous area, or he just smothers it and it's a whistle and you slow things down and he keeps calm, cool, and collected. So like Leevi Meriläinen is giving Sens fans, Sens management, and Sens coaching staff, and probably all the players lots of confidence right now, and for a good reason. He continues game after game to show that he belongs here.
I was just going to say, if you're feeling confident at home on the couch watching it, what do you think the players feel on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be a lot more, and it allows them, Ross, to play in their structured game without feeling like they need to get out of position or double up on guys in the defensive zone to make sure shots aren't getting through. Now, I know we were talking, Ross, before the record that the Senators blocked a lot of shots last night, which helps you get a 2-0 victory, but it doesn't feel like they're blocking shots out of desperation, right? Like sometimes we see teams do that where they're like, oh my God, we cannot allow anything to get towards the net. Let's just throw ourselves in front of these. And I think a lot of those were just hitting players. Like obviously Thomas Chabot, we hope he's okay. Josh Norris got hit with a stinger too. That looked like it could have been more serious than it was. So this team defensively is doing what they can to support Leevi Meriläinen as well.
There were a couple of blocks in the third period. I hit on it on the postcast, but Tyler Clevin in particular. How about Artem Zub with 7 blocked shots in last night's game? He's all the way back. The D-core looks great. I don't know if it's just a heater for Tyler Clevin. Time on ice, career high last night for him with Thomas Chabot leaving in the first period. Precautionary reasons. We'll get into that more a little later, but just him and Nicholas Matinpalo, the chemistry that they have playing in Belleville. Like, give me a low event third pair every day of the week that can move the puck and break it out just fine. Like, I thought Matinpalo had a couple plays where he had it and he made a little quick move behind the net and was able to get out of trouble with his feet, which was a real nice change of pace and being able to control the puck and at least get it out of the zone or out of harm's way. But it all comes back to Leevi Meriläinen, who's 5-2-0 this season with a 199 goals against average and a 925 save percentage. It is incredible what we're seeing. And last thing, I'll compare him to the Hamburglar, but this is from Sportsnet Stats.
Yep.
The only goalies in Senators history to record multiple shutouts within their first 10 NHL games. You guessed it, Leevi Meriläinen and Andrew Hammond. Do you remember when Hammond's 2 shutouts were? I do. I remember them like they were yesterday.
Yeah, Ross, I don't have that encyclopedia brain like you do, so I do not remember 2 shutouts from 10 years ago.
It was, because it was the Valley of Death. It's where you go to California and you have to play San Jose, Anaheim, and LA. And he had back-to-back shutouts in LA and Anaheim. And you're like, okay, now is it starting to be for real? And then they had to play in Minnesota and Winnipeg. They beat them both, and he was just making some unreal saves in those games. So it is giving me flashbacks. I'll admit it. It's a long way to go before you get to a 21-2 record.
Yeah.
But this kid's also 6 years younger than Hammond was when Hammond came up. He was a 25, 26-year-old journeyman at that point that had just gotten kind of lightning in a bottle. But the sustainability of this is what really gets me excited. And I can't imagine how happy Linus Ullmark is right now. Like, rest up. Now it's not every day we were talking about when's Linus Ullmark coming back. We need him in goal ASAP. And now it's like, hey, if you want to take an extra week, we got this kid. He's all good.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's good for the whole team, Ross. Think back a couple weeks ago, my number one trade target, and we'll get into trade targets and UFA signing possibilities later. But I was like, you were, I think, hoping for a forward. And I was like, no. We need to find a goalie. If we don't find another goalie, this team is screwed, even when Ullmark comes back, because we don't have a lot of confidence in Forsberg, unfortunately. I've really backtracked on that and don't have that feeling anymore. Because even when Ullmark is healthy, Ross, we talked about it on the postcast last night, they would have to present Ottawa Senators fans with some crazy stats or reasoning not to keep Leevi Meriläinen up, even when Ullmark's back. This guy can't be sent down for the rest of the year, in my opinion. But also, Ross, I want to touch a little bit on Matinpalo as well, because I think it's a positive that he's here too. You look at a young Finnish goalie in Leevi Meriläinen. It must be nice to have another Finnish player on this team in Matinpalo, a guy you probably already have a connection with through Belleville. And then look at the chemistry. You talked about how good Tyler Clevin's game is. Those two spent a lot of time together on a pair in Belleville. And I don't know about you, Ross, but after last season, I kind of thought Matinpalo might just be like, okay, I tried it in North America. I mostly played in the AHL. I think he got, 2 games in the NHL last season?
4.
So he got a couple games, didn't really turn into anything. I was kind of the mind that he was going to be like, well, I tried it. I'm going to go back to Europe and be a top 4 defenseman there. But credit to him and credit to the Ottawa Senators. They both saw a mutual benefit to him staying here. He re-signs, and I think he noticed, Ross, even with the kind of logjam of right-hand defenseman that this team has, I think he noticed that there was an opportunity here for him if he stuck it out. And at the very least, he was going to play top pair minutes in Belleville. So it's working out really well that he's the kind of, I say veteran, because he's 27 and he has a lot of pro games in Liga, that he decided to stick around in this organization because the connections and chemistry that he has with some of the young guys in Ottawa right now, I got to think that has an effect and is helping things out. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Nicholas Matinpalo.
Whole decor deserves a shout out after last night's game. Thomas Chabot left in the first period, but the Senators did announce it is a day off for the Senators, but they announced that Max Gannett has been reassigned to Belleville. I mean, that's got to be a great sign for Thomas Chabot to play tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I even saw that he was going to join Belleville on the road because wherever they're playing was not far from Long Island. So it seems like it's very clear that the Ottawa Senators don't feel the need to have him around. My guess, Ross, is Chabot hopefully got a good night's sleep last night, takes a nice day to relax today, and then we're going to see him tomorrow wearing a bubble.
Yeah, that was a lot of blood.
That was quite the scene. Yeah.
That was scary. So thank goodness that sounds like Thomas Chabot is all right. And that's another team building moment. Look, a top guy on the back end goes out. Mm-hmm. How good does it feel for those young guys like Tyler Clevin playing 22 minutes in last night's game, man? It wasn't so long ago. He was getting back-to-back games with under 10 minutes in late November. So his trajectory is really stabilized here. Jake Sanderson playing 31 minutes and 26 seconds. You got the steady presence of Artem Zub and Nick Jensen back there. Really in a good spot right now, the Ottawa Senators are. They're also getting contributions from all over the lineup. Adam Gaudette gets his 14th goal of the year. He snaps a long goal drought. Tyler Clevin with an assist on that one. So does Shane Pinto. And now, didn't bring it up on the postcast, Pilsy, but I'll do it right now. The Senators are now 48, 11, and 6 all time when Shane Pinto records a point.
Ross, we got to start parlaying a Shane Pinto point with a Sens win. I don't know if you've been doing that, but it's kind of crazy. We haven't been taking advantage of that because both of us had Pinto point over at FanDuel, and both of us had the Sens winning that game. So let's work a little smarter here and use these stats to our advantage.
And after a bit of a dip there for a while, the stat is back. Sens record when all of Stützle, Norris, and Pinto play is now 44, 26, and 6.
We've really been spoiled, Ross, by having those three guys play together almost every single game. Pinto was out for a little bit here, but we haven't had this consistency of those three all playing together ever in any season as much as we have this year.
That's 76 games, by the way. So we're getting close to a full season worth of game log for them. So we'll keep that up. I was very nervous last night, though, Pilsy, about Josh Norris when he took that shot.
He had to be helped up into the bench. Like Drake Batherson had to pick him up and put him into the bench. Like I thought that might have been something a lot more serious.
Hey, you deserve a day off today, Josh, after getting it between the legs in the game on the weekend. And then now this, I mean, just rest up, man. And like I said on the postcast too, glad that Norris and Batherson were the two to assist on the Artem Zub empty net slap shot goal. They deserved it. They both had great games last night. Tim Stützle has been flying recently, and it's his 23rd birthday. So we're going to look at his year-over-year point production, not just by season, but by age. Because you might remember, Tim Stützle made his NHL debut on his 19th birthday. Yeah. So we'll have that conversation next. And as Pilsy talked about, John Klingberg. Does that make sense for the Ottawa Senators? A 30-plus-year-old right-shot defenseman who's coming off hip resurfacing surgery? That and a rumored price tag for Taylor Hall and Ryan Donato. Should the Senators be in on those? That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Look, I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was going to a concert this summer. I'm going to a theater event on the weekend, The Lion King in Toronto. I'm stoked for that, and I got my tickets on Gametime. Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets you don't even want. I also use Gametime to purchase tickets for the Ottawa Senators up against the Tampa Bay Lightning in February. I'm going to that. I'm excited, and it's the first time for me in that barn, so I wanted to see the view from my seat before buying. You can do that on their app, and super deals offer great seats at unbeatable pricing. And I hate surprises at checkout, so I turned on the all-in pricing, and it shows you the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub. The vibes are free at the GCP. Make sure to check out our bar in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. It's your neighborhood pub that has awesome food, great drinks, and atmosphere to match. We had a comment in the postcast last night. Couldn't get to it, but I want to ask you right now, if someone's going to the GCP for the first time on Thursday to take the Sens shuttle to the game against Washington for just $17 round trip, what would you be ordering at the GCP, Pilsy?
I always go with the buffalo chicken wrap, Ross. Get it with fries, and maybe pair that with a nice rum and Coke.
Ooh, I'm a big hot and honey wings guy. That's my go-to play at the GCP, and I'll mix that in with a nachos for the table. Be a crowd pleaser. Get the nachos, share it up, and on Sens game days, get 10% off your order by letting them know you listen to Locked On Senators. So if you're taking the Sens shuttle, $17 round trip. It leaves the pub an hour and 15 minutes before the game. Sue gets you there right in one piece. She is a sensational driver and gets you back to the pub 15 minutes after the final buzzer. So you don't have to beat the traffic, and you can get right back to the bus, and then you beat the traffic right in the carpool lane, the bus lane. You just fly out of there. You're just waving at everybody just stacked up in the CTC parking lot. So head to where the vibes are free. Live music every Saturday night. It is the Glebe Central Pub. All right, Pilsy. So the Ottawa Senators victorious on Long Island. They're now 500 on the road this season. And Tim Stützle not on the score sheet last night, Pilsy, but he certainly could have been in the first shift of the game. Had that assist, Adam Gaudette. The goal was called back, but Tim Stützle had scored in 2 consecutive games before that. He's now 23 years old. That's where the old prospect gurus will all stop talking about you. They finally stopped, but not before Corey Pronman with The Athletic put out his top under 23 players as of January 1st, and talk about a pat on the back. His top tier was 3 players long. Macklin Celebrini at 1.
1-1.
Tim Stützle at number 2. And Connor Bedard at number 3. Your thoughts?
I mean, I got to be honest, Ross, that was very surprising for me.
Me too.
I don't know if I'd put Tim Stützle ahead of Connor Bedard, but...
And again, this isn't for right now. This is for career projection.
Yes, yeah. But Tim Stützle's one heck of a player. So it's not that crazy that he's in a top tier of elite young talent, but he's already put up 90 points in a season before, Ross. Like, he's a guy that I don't think it's that crazy to look at him and think that he could get 100 points consistently, especially, Ross, if they finally find a proper kind of duo of line mates for him. He hasn't really had the top tier wingers on his lines throughout his time in Ottawa. So the fact that this kid just turned 23 and has 7 more years left on that deal. This is the first year that deal, is it, or second?
Second.
So 6 more years left on that deal is just crazy. So we love Timmy Superstar here on this show.
And if you're watching on YouTube, we pulled up the graphic. It's also on Twitter at Sens Central, where his points per game from ages 19 to 20 to 21 was just elevating to an elite level. Now, he had that bum wrist throughout the second half of last season when he was 22 years old. So the numbers came down just a touch. They're still ahead of his age 20 season, but they weren't quite as elite as they were in his 21-year-old season when he had 28 goals and 61 assists. That's 89 points in 78 games as a 21-year-old.
I rounded up to 90 for him.
Nice. Well, he had 90 points in the full NHL season, so you're right on track there, Pills.
Okay, good.
In 80 games as a 22-year-old, Tim Stützle had 25 goals and 50 assists. That's 0.94 points per game. So the evolution of Tim Stützle, and what I didn't put in this graphic, but I could have, is the plus minus has definitely improved dramatically in his last 365 days. So I still don't think this is the finished product of Tim Stützle. I think he's got more to give, and that to me, it just makes it even more exciting of what's to come in his young career.
Yeah, and Ross, he was looking confident out there last night. Like you mentioned, he doesn't end up getting on the point sheet, but he does have a lot of good opportunities where he does some toe drags and is actually shooting the puck now. He had that really nice dish over to Ridley Gregg, and then Ridley Gregg rang it off the crossbar. So he's still getting in the mix, and he's still finding ways. Like we talked about a couple episodes ago, Ross, he's third on the team in hits. Like, that is so surprising that Tim Stützle would be third on this team in hits this season. So Tinted Timmy, he's rounded out his game a lot more, and I got to think that some credit is due to the coaching staff as well, trying to find ways to, preach having a more well-rounded game than just being all offensive like he had been in the past.
Yeah, he's a +6 this year on the season, and just an absolute stud. I can't wait to see what the final 27, 29, 31-year-old Tim Stützle looks like in the National Hockey League. Hey, maybe he'll even win 50% of his faceoffs one year. That's the one knock.
Yeah.
You just cannot win in the faceoff dot, but that's why he's got G Money on his wing, one of the best faceoff man in the entire National Hockey League. So that is our Tim Stützle breakdown. And on the other side, does he need a winger? And if so, could there be one had for the cheap on the trade market? Those conversations are next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. Maybe you need a top 6 winger that you need to hire. How can you find amazing candidates fast? I got a solution for you guys. It's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you've been in the spot where you need the right hire, like yesterday, the pressure's on and every day without the right person is a setback, that's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the Locked On Senators podcast. Remember, you can get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
All right, Pilsy, we made it to Wednesday. Just 2 games in the National Hockey League tonight. We've got the Buffalo Sabres hosting the Carolina Hurricanes. Good luck to them. And then the Minnesota Wild hosting the Edmonton Oilers. That'll be a great hockey game in Mini. Tomorrow night, 13 games. We'll have that preview of Washington's visit to Ottawa. That will be on tomorrow's Locked On Senators. We're very excited about that one, to say the least. This is a measuring stick type game against one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. But Pilsy, because there's only 2 games and because Buffalo and Carolina are the only Eastern Conference teams, thought this could be a good opportunity to take a peek at the standings after there were a lot of East wildcard team potential candidates in last night's action. Boston Bruins get a huge win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously don't love that, but now Tampa all of a sudden is faltering. I took it as a personal slight that Tampa benched Braden Point for that game because he missed the team meeting. There's other implications here, Mr. John Cooper. We kind of wanted that win for you guys to keep the free fall rolling for the Boston Bruins. Was not meant to be. So the Bruins get 2 points. They stay atop the wild card again with more games played than anybody else. Columbus with a huge comeback win to beat the Philadelphia Flyers in a shootout. Zach Werenski's making his case to be an MVP candidate. Forget the Norris, MVP. What this guy's doing in Columbus is outrageous. Credit to them. Obviously, a team that is easy to root for with all the tragedy and sorrow they've been through off the ice this year. Ottawa, though, despite being 1 point behind Columbus, is first in the wild card race when it comes to points percentage. Montreal got a win last night over Utah. They're 1 point behind Ottawa in the same amount of games played. Detroit's 7-game win streak came to an end. They lost to San Jose 5-3, so they're at 44 points now. Philadelphia's at 44 points. Pittsburgh's at 44 points. And the Rangers blew a late lead against Colorado. They lose in overtime. They're at 43 points. Pilsy, I think Ottawa might have killed the Islanders last night. Like that was a big loss for them. It was the first of a 7-game homestand, so they could turn things around still, but they feel like they're kind of separating the wrong way. Remember we talked about we need more teams to fall out of the race? Well, Buffalo's done.
Yeah.
I didn't even put them in the graphic. I purposely cropped them out. But the Islanders, they're next.
Yeah, we put the Islanders underwater here. We sunk them. Thank goodness. Nobody wants to see that team anymore. No.
Thanks to our sailor, Leevi Meriläinen.
Yeah, there you go. Nobody wants to see them in the playoffs. Yeah, this is such a tight race here, Ross. I still can't believe the Columbus Blue Jackets are hanging on like this. I thought they might have dropped off, but they continue to keep things rolling. An amazing home record, a terrible road record. So hopefully that comes back to the road record comes back to bite them here.
4-0 in the shootout as well. More shootouts than anybody and no losses.
Wow.
I shouldn't say more than anybody. Philly's got 6. Funny enough, that's who they played in the shootout last night. Pittsburgh's got 5, but Pittsburgh, like the Boston Bruins, are both at 46 games played. Ottawa's at 43.
And the Blue Jackets 8-2 in their last 10. So yeah, credit to them. But I like the Senators' chances here, Ross. They're right in the mix. I think as they get healthier, they're going to be able to be a little bit more consistent. Hopefully, Linus Ullmark is back sooner than later, and you can have a tandem of Ullmark and Meriläinen. Not that Ullmark being injured is the big problem or story these days, because we've got Leevi playing so well. But I really have a lot of confidence that throughout the, what have we got, 39 games remaining, that this team can outlast the Columbus Blue Jackets, Montreal Canadiens, and Detroit Red Wings, in my opinion. I like Philly and Pittsburgh. I don't know if I'm that worried about them. I guess I should be. They're still right in that mix as well. But for me, really, I'm looking at the 2 other Atlantic teams, the Canadiens and the Red Wings, and then the Blue Jackets that we need to battle for here.
You know that Ottawa's got 3 games left against each of Boston, Columbus, and Montreal.
Yeah, wow. Well, I mean, it's crazy. The Sens and Habs, they've only played once, right? The game we were at in Montreal.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. It's all part of the experience. But they've got 2 games this month against Boston. Like, this is showtime. Ones. And they just put Hampus Lindholm on LTIR. They just put Charlie McAvoy on IR. Mark Kastelik is on IR as well. He's been he hits like crazy, and I don't think he'll be in Ottawa on Saturday. So we'll see, because then Ottawa's in Boston next Thursday. Like, this could be a big swing right now, this week in the standings, if Ottawa can continue on their winning ways. Like, Pilsy, imagine I told you Brady Tkachuk would go 4 straight games without a point and Ottawa would win 3 of them.
Yeah, that is surprising that Brady hasn't been leading the charge offensively like he usually does. But hey, you got to find other ways to get it done, and the Sens are doing that.
They certainly are, but do they need help, Pilsy? The rumors came out about John Klingberg yesterday. Not even rumors, reports from Darren Dreger on TSN. And he kind of worded it in a way where I think Klingberg is going to sign back in Toronto, where he last played briefly before the surgery. He also said that Edmonton and Ottawa are the finalists for the right shot defensemen to service. Look, if we're talking about a prime Klingberg that could outscore his problems, I would be all for it. Yeah. But I don't think the Senators need an all offensive defenseman to play on their bottom pair. I like the low event style that we're getting from Clevin and Matin Paolo. I just don't see it as a fit for the Ottawa Senators. What were your thoughts when you saw the initial report from Dreger?
I think initially, Ross, I was like, yeah, why not take a chance on this, right? Like you think about John Klingberg and you think about those successful seasons he's had in Dallas. And Ross, I was reminded when he finished that season with the Dallas Stars 2021, 2022, 47 points in 74 games. I think Dallas wanted to sign him to a long-term deal, but he was like, I want to hit UFA and really get a lot of my value. And then nobody was that interested in him. And he ended up signing a 1-year deal with the Ducks. And I think probably in hindsight, him and his agent are like, maybe we should have taken that long-term deal because things haven't been great for him. He signs with the Ducks, does okay there, I guess. Then it gets traded to Minnesota. Then the Leafs signed him. And then, as you mentioned, he has that hip restructuring surgery. And I got to think that's why the Leafs are in the mix for this, Ross, because their team doctors and their team would know better than anyone where he's actually at and what they can kind of expect from him since he's the last team they played for, and they probably monitor him closer than anyone else. But for me, Ross, I just like, let's say they do get the opportunity to sign him, or they do push to sign him. Where do you put him? Because like you mentioned,
Belleville.
Yeah, well, yeah, you probably want to start conditioning stint in Belleville. But like you mentioned, this is a guy that's all offense. Like if you look at his plus minus, it hasn't been good. It's a lot in the minuses for the last like 4 years.
And even on Dallas, on a very good team.
Yeah, now, mind you, he's putting up points in a few of those years. And Klingberg's never been the defenseman that has wowed everybody with his defensive structure. It's always been about the offense. So you got to keep that in mind. But he's not playing with Sanderson. Sanderson and Zub are all the way back, like we talked about. Thomas Chabot and Nick Jensen have been the best pair this season. And then we've just had high praise for Tyler Kleven and Matim Palo. And then I know Sens fans don't love it, but Travis Hamonick's going to be back in a couple weeks too. That's another right shot defenseman. So
I don't need that.
I'm not saying that either, Ross, but you know the coaching staff is going to get Hamonic back in the mix when he's back, whether we like it or not. Like, where does Klingberg fit? I don't think he is a fit. And the last thing you need is for a decor that finally feels like it has pairs that work and have good chemistry and each are slotted in their roles. The last thing you need is to bring in a new guy, an aging veteran that slows things down and is a defensive liability, which fans of teams that have watched him, that seemed like all the comments on the replies on Twitter, Ross, is Leafs fans, Stars fans being like, look, this guy is such a liability defensively. And that's not what we need. And I don't think that would help Tyler Kleven in a third pair role where he would most likely be slotted if he was signed here. So for me, I'm out on John Klingberg. I just don't think it's necessary. And I don't think if you're going to add a guy to the decor, that's not the guy.
No, but I wouldn't mind more depth on the back end. You can never have too much, especially if this team deserves their GM going to get out and give them a little extra boost, but just not the guy. Not the guy for me. And if they do sign him, you got to hope he starts in Belleville and can figure it out. I'm also worried because for a guy whose mobility is his number one asset, what's a restructured hip going to affect that? The only two guys in the NHL that have had this surgery right now are Patrick Kane and Jesse Puljujarvi, two forwards. So no defensemen have really come back from this. And I don't think he was at the level of Patrick Kane ever offensively. But also like Puljujarvi was just on waivers. Like he's still struggling to really get back into a rhythm of being former 4th overall pick. But even that aside, just being an everyday contributor at the NHL level. So I'm also out on John Klingberg, but I'm in on Taylor Hall. And reports are that the Chicago Blackhawks are looking for a 3rd round pick in return for Taylor Hall and I don't want to make it sound like a 3rd round pick gets you both, right? One or the other. The price tags are a 3rd round pick. Now, Chicago's basically used every draft pick that Ottawa's had over the last 3 years from the DeBrincat and the Zaitsev trade. I think Ottawa gave them 5 draft picks for both those guys combined. 2 for Zaitsev, 3 for DeBrincat. So Kyle Davidson knows who to call when he wants draft picks. Obviously, different regime here now. But look, Taylor Hall, he's not the player he once was. He's not going to win an MVP again or anything like that. But that's the type of player, if Ottawa can figure it out with the cap and make the money work, he would be a guy I'd be very interested in adding to this group.
And I think initially I was the same, Ross, but let's break this down. Is he the type of player? Because look, we're looking for that sixth forward in the top six, a winger to play with Tim Stützle. But Ross, you've been the one that's saying all along, the number one attribute you're looking for in that sixth forward and a winger for Tim Stützle is speed. And I think it's pretty clear Taylor Hall slowed down over the years. Now he's still able to put up points. His hockey IQ is still up there for sure. And I'm not trying to dog Taylor Hall as a player. I think for a third round pick, that's great value to get in return. But
that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't be giving up a first for him, but if you can add him to the group, he could be kind of a plug and play. Like put him on a third line with Pinto and Amadio or whatnot. And then all of a sudden now you're looking at a lineup where you could have Ridley Gregg on the fourth line in certain situations. He can still play up and down.
Do you want Ridley Gregg on the fourth line?
If everybody's healthy, it's an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. And this is the thing. I think fans sometimes you want to add, and you start putting the points in, and you're like, oh, there's so many points. But then, like a lot of great teams, Ross, they don't want to add anyone because you're like, well, we're going to ruin what we've got. And you just signed Ridley Gregg to a 4-year deal. And you basically tell him we believe in you, and then you go add guys and bump him down to the fourth line. And he's playing 10 minutes a night. Like I don't think that's great for the locker room. And let's
be a short term, right? Taylor Hall's on an expiring deal, so it would be when Ridley Gregg is. You basically tell Ridley, you say, look, you're still on your entry level deal. We have an opportunity to add a veteran here. We've shown you that we believe in you. You're going to get your minutes. You're going to probably still get your power play touches. You're a big part of the PK. Like you still have an everyday role on this team on your entry-level contract. And this guy's gone by the time your extension kicks in. And then that's where we want you to pop off.
Yeah. And that's fair.
Because his game is built as like, he's better than a fourth liner, but I don't have any issue with saying, oh, I don't know, like Taylor Hall, you can't play on your fourth line. No. Right? Like you need him to be with scoring type players to have success. I think Ridley Gregg could have success in that type of role. That's what I'm getting at here.
Sure. Yeah, and that's fair. But I believe that you want Ridley Gregg playing anywhere but your fourth line, in my opinion. But let's say they do add Taylor Hall. But then, Ross, let's do the math here and let's plug and play. Amadio comes back. Perron comes back. Like where do all these guys end up playing? Like how do you set up your lineup if you get Taylor Hall back with Amadio and Perron back?
Well, why don't you just tell me that Gregor's healthy and everybody else?
Yeah,
like
Gregor as well. Yeah,
they just haven't had a healthy team all year. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about what a healthy lineup looks like when we haven't seen it for a single game all year.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, you're going to get at least 2 of those guys back.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I like the idea of bringing Taylor Hall in, Ross, but I think once I started thinking about it and I was like, oh, where do you put him? Oh, where do you put this guy? How does that affect this guy's role and this guy's ice time? It just didn't make sense to me. And keep in mind, he's got a $6 million cap hit.
Yeah, like, they would have to eat.
But then you're giving up more than a third rounder if they're eating money, I would assume, right? Like
they might need to be at the cap floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, they're probably getting close to that. Although they did sign a bunch of other players to kind of help that. But
that's fair.
I just think it sounds enticing until you start digging into it and you're like, is that the one? Is this the one that makes sense? Like, honestly, Ross, for me, I started leaning more towards looking at Ryan Donato. He's only got a $2 million cap hit. So that's very easy to fit in. You don't need to retain money. And if he's at a third round pick price, that's not bad. And he's projected to get 46 points this year. And he's been a consistent, like right around 30 points, like in 2021, 22, 31, then 27, then 30. He's got 24 points right now. And that's the type of player, Ross. You had the argument you can't assume this team's going to be healthy all the time. So you want depth. That's the type of player where I would have no issue as him as a depth guy. And look, if he comes in and he's not really needed that much, I don't think that's that big of a deal. Whereas if you trade for Taylor Hall and you kind of bury him in your lineup, like we saw in Chicago, he was healthy scratched and that caused an issue. And he was not happy about that. And he's a guy that feels like he's deserved a little bit more respect and that he should be getting these opportunities. And I think that's fair. But a guy like Ryan Donato, I think you could mix into your lineup, plug and play him, have a little bit more depth. And at the cap hit of $2 million, and if it's only a 3rd round pick, that's more the type of move I think would make sense for the Sens right now.
Now, to be clear, my understanding or my initial thought when you're getting Taylor Hall is he's starting with Tim Stützle. Like he's playing.
Yeah, that's where you would put him to start, definitely.
Correct.
Yeah, you'd want to try that out. And I like the idea of it. And if you can get him on a 3rd round pick and you can make the money work, I don't hate it. But it's just once I started digging into it and seeing how this lineup would actually work, I couldn't find ways that I thought made sense for everyone as a team.
No, that's very fair, and we'll see what happens with Taylor Hall because I'd imagine he will not be going back to Chicago, and
no,
we'll see if he finishes the year there. But I just think there's more to give from him, and he's got some experience now playing in some high leverage games with the Boston Bruins over the last few years, and I don't hate Ryan Donato either. I'd be happy with either. I think Ottawa does want to get a little bit more depth at all positions right now, and Taylor Hall's most common line mates are Tyler Bertuzzi and Connor Bedard this year. So he has been playing with really good players there as well. So we will see if Ottawa is testing the market on these types of players. It's going to be interesting too, because it almost feels like there's 2 trade deadlines this year. A lot of the insiders are saying that some teams will try to make their moves before the Four Nations tournament in February to get them settled in, get them in their system, and have some practice time before they get out on the ice. And then we've got the NHL trade deadline, one of our favorite times of the year here on Locked On Senators, coming up on March 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we will be all over that as things develop. And wouldn't it be nice to be a buyer at the trade deadline? Ottawa's been pretty quiet. They made that big Patrick Brown splash 2 years ago when they thought they had a chance.
Well, Jacob Chychrun.
Oh, yeah, that was pre-trade deadline, right?
That was right there, and that was a huge
week
splash.
Before. That was fun. That was
necessarily didn't work out.
No, but it was fun.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, let's have some fun, man. I like
okay, I'm down. So get them both, Ross. We got 3rd round picks. Get Donato and Taylor Hall.
Yeah, Ottawa's got multiple after the Tarasenko trade elevated a 4th to a 3rd. So they got 2 3rd rounders in that trade. They also got a 3rd rounder in the Nick Jensen, Jacob Chychrun trade. But nice work, Pierre. Gave up a 2nd round pick in 2026 for Jacob Chychrun. So Ottawa's without a 2nd round pick in 2026. And as of right now, they have to give up a 1st round pick in one of the next 2 drafts. That's why you got to look at this secondary market, the guys who are depth, less expensive for acquisition this trade deadline. The 1st round pick for Ottawa, untouchable at this draft.
Even 2nd round picks, Ross. This team cannot trade 1st or 2nd round picks right now. They can't.
Because you've got to give up one of your next 2. And if Ottawa makes the playoffs this year, I'd imagine they give up their 1st round pick this year. That would be my guess. Because if you make the playoffs, it's at least 17th overall. Not ideal, but if you're going to do it, or the thought process might be to kick it as far down as possible and ask for extensions like Michael Andlauer has teased before. We'll see. But Ottawa's prospect pool ranked 27th in the Athletic, probably lower other places in the scouting world. They need draft picks. They need to get that second wave of guys that can come out and be like Ridley Gregg and help out on your entry-level deal. I know he's the same draft as Timmy and those guys, but because he went back to junior for 2 more years, it kicked that down the trail a little bit more. You need those entry-level deals to be competitive. But Ottawa's competitive right now with an entry-level deal in goal. Leevi Meriläinen, the 2nd shutout. And our guy Julio Hashem on Twitter just pointed this one out. How's this for a stat? In 7 games this year, seven games this year, 6 starts, by the way, Leevi Meriläinen has more shutouts than Joonas Korpisalo and Cam Talbot had combined for the Senators in 91 games.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I mean, yeah, the Korpisalo one doesn't surprise me that much, but yeah, it's crazy. You know what, Ross? But I'm looking at that as a good stat because those guys are in the past. I'm not worried about how that went. It's how is it right now? And Leevi Meriläinen is making this future look a lot brighter than the past did.
Tomorrow, home game. First of 2 straight at home. The Sens will be in New Jersey on Sunday, at the New York Rangers on Tuesday. But tomorrow, it's the Washington Capitals coming to town. The first meeting between these two teams this season. It is the first of 3 meetings. They'll also play on January 30th and on March 3rd. So we're really looking forward to a tough test against them. We'll have a game day preview for you tomorrow on the show. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.